Graduation day was supposed to be loud, like the kind of loud where someone waves a balloon with your name on it, and cries so hard, the mascara ends up on their shoes. Instead, mine was silent. Not because the school forgot. Not because I didn't invite anyone. But because my parents had a standing, family tradition: Wednesday night bowling. They never missed it. Not for colds, not for car trouble, not even for my high school graduation. Can't you ask them to change the date? Mom had asked when I told her the ceremony was at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. It's graduation, I said slowly. It's not flexible. Well, Dad chimed in, tying his shoes like we were talking about which restaurant to go to. We've had our lane reservations since January. We can't just ditch the team. They're counting on us. Apparently, spare me the drama, their bowling league team was more important than their only son walking across a stage in a plastic robe to collect a diploma he barely slept to earn. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. I just nodded, said, "Okay," and left the room. That night, I ironed my own gown, taped the broken tassel back onto my cap with double-sided carpet tape, and walked the graduation stage to the faint applause of strangers clapping out of politeness. I even took a selfie in the bathroom mirror afterward, because I didn't have anyone waiting outside for photos. When I texted it to my parents, all I got back was, "Mom, cute! We won 2 rounds tonight. Dad bowled a turkey." They didn't mean dinner. You might think I cried that night. I didn't. I'd already burned through my disappointment quota by the time I turned 17. My parents weren't evil. They weren't abusive. They were just proudly indifferent. They liked winners. Shiny, talkative, confident people who looked good in family photos and made jokes at the dinner table. I was quiet. Technical. The kid who fixed the broken vacuum, mowed the lawn without being asked, and got decent grades no one asked about. My younger cousin Tyler? Got a pizza party for passing P.E. Me? I once got a post-it note that said, "Good hustle in math," stuck to a bottle of store-brand mouthwash. It was like they didn't know how to raise a son who wasn't a cheerleader or a prodigy. So I did what I always did. Worked. In silence. After graduation, while everyone else took a gap year to find themselves in Bali or get clarity at a 3-week music festival, I took a job at a small tech repair shop in town. Nothing fancy, just a sign that said "Bite Me" and an owner named Raj who drank 6 Red Bulls a day and wore Pokemon socks like they were dress code. It paid minimum wage and sometimes included leftover donuts. But it was stable. Honest. And best of all, mine. Raj liked me because I didn't talk much, fixed things fast, and didn't complain when customers called me the quiet one with the calculator face. I learned how to replace motherboard components with a soldering iron so hot it could torch a fly in midair. I learned how to rebuild laptops, phones, tablets, even retro game consoles. And in between jobs I studied finance, investing, real estate, YouTube at night, library books by day. I had spreadsheets labeled things like Year 5 Escape Plan and How to Get Out Without Saying Goodbye. Because I had a plan. Not for revenge. Just for freedom. One night, around 9 months after graduation, I walked in from a double shift to find my parents laughing at the kitchen table. My mom had a wine cooler in hand. My dad was bragging about how his bowling team was entering a tournament that might get them to Vegas. "Landon," my mom said, looking up. "Oh, we meant to tell you. That friend of yours called, the one from the bank? Something about a meeting?" I blinked. "You answered my phone?" "Well, it was ringing while you were showering," she said, like that made it better. "She said it was about some investment thing you're involved in?" I told her you're probably just doing taxes or something. That friend from the bank wasn't just a friend. It was my contact at First United Bank. And the investment thing. Well, let's just say bowling night was about to get very interesting. The truth is, I never planned to end up in real estate. I didn't even know how mortgages worked until I was 17 and saw my mom yelling at the dishwasher and saying, "This house is gonna bankrupt me before your father does." It started as curiosity. I was already fixing cracked iPhone screens for people who couldn't afford to replace them, or didn't want their parents to know they dropped their phone in a porta potty. But the money was laughable. After rent, bills, and a grocery list that basically said rice plus hope, I had maybe $30 left each week. So I started watching finance YouTubers. You know the ones, fancy cars, open plan kitchens, talking about passive income, like it was as easy as making toast. Most of them were full of it. But one guy, a soft-spoken real estate investor who still wore hoodies, made it click. Don't wait to buy real estate, he said. Buy real estate, then wait. And I did. Well, sort of. It started with a one-bedroom foreclosed condo on the edge of town. It was the kind of place most people wouldn't touch, smelled like sadness and old carpet cleaner, came with a balcony that might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. But I had saved. Not much, just enough to impress Raj, who knew a guy, who introduced me to a loan officer named Elise. Elise had been a teacher before she went into banking. She was sharp, kind, and asked me why a 19-year-old kid walked into a mortgage meeting carrying a folder labeled Landon's Financial Escape Plan. Do not laugh. She didn't laugh. She looked through it for 20 minutes and said, I've seen millionaires with worse planning. I nearly cried in her office. Instead, I said thank you and asked where to sign. A month later, I was the proud owner of a property that needed more work than a broken Nintendo Wii that had lived through a hurricane. But I didn't care. I'd done it. I had something of my own. Something no one could take. Not flashy, not impressive, but mine. And every day after my shift at Bite Me, I'd change out of my repair polo, put on gloves, and teach myself how to patch drywall and replace busted floorboards using nothing but YouTube and spite. That place took 6 months of elbow grease, caffeine, and a few bloody knuckles. But when it was done, it sparkled. I put it up for rent. Within a week, I had a quiet tenant named Nora who paid on time, gave me a plant as a thank you gift, and called me Mr. Rhodes, which was weird but nice. And I used her rent to fund the next property. And the next. And the next. By the time Elise called again, a year after my parents skipped my graduation, I wasn't just the kid who knew how to solder phone batteries. I was a registered LLC owner with 3 rental properties and a plan. She said, Landon, we have a local couple applying for a mortgage. Older, looking to refinance. But the numbers don't look good. Thing is, we might have an opening if we can match them to a private investor. It's a long shot, but I thought of you. I hesitated. I don't know, I said. I'm not sure I'm ready for that level. Don't sell yourself short, she said. You're not the same kid who walked in here with duct-taped spreadsheets. I asked for the couple's names. She said them without flinching. James and Christine Rhodes. For a second, I thought I misheard her. But no. James and Christine. My parents. The same people who ditched my graduation for glow-in-the-dark bowling and dollar beers. Elise continued. They're looking to refinance their house to pay off debts and possibly remodel the kitchen. But their credit's taken a few hits. With the right investor to back the loan, we could make it happen. I didn't say a word. My heart wasn't racing. My hands didn't shake. I just smiled. And said, Schedule the meeting. Elise scheduled the meeting for Friday at 10 a.m. She asked me if I wanted to keep things quiet, maybe sit behind the glass, let the paperwork do the talking. But I shook my head. Nope, I said. Let's do it properly. Conference room, chairs, awkward small talk, the works. She grinned. You sure? Oh, I want them to know exactly who signed the check. That morning, I woke up early, ironed my one decent button-down, and even polished my shoes. I hadn't worn them since prom, where I stood in the corner like a decorative fern. This time, I was walking in as a stakeholder. I arrived 15 minutes early. Elise had already laid out the paperwork. There were little name tags in front of each chair. Mine read Landon Rhodes, private investor. I took a seat at the far end of the long mahogany table, adjusted my posture, and waited. At 10:03, the glass door swung open. I didn't look up right away. Just heard the familiar clack of my mom's sandals and my dad's. "We found it!" voice as they walked in. "Oh good," Mom said cheerfully. "We're not late, are we?" They froze when they saw me, like statues mid-stride. "Landon?" my mom said, blinking like I was a hallucination. I looked up slowly, calm as a cloud. "Morning," I said. Dad narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Elise entered, smiling as if nothing was weird about this setup whatsoever. "Christine, James, this is Mr. Rhodes," she said professionally. "He'll be your prospective investor for this refinancing." The silence? Delicious. My mom let out a short, confused laugh. Wait, what? "I'm the investor," I said, folding my hands. "Well, technically my LLC is. But I'll be the one reviewing the loan terms." "You're joking," Dad said, eyes darting between Elise and me like he just stepped into a prank show. This is some kind of joke, right?" Elise raised an eyebrow. "No. Mr. Rhodes meets all the bank's requirements for private lending partnerships. Shall we begin?" And just like that, the meeting began. Or at least, it tried to. My parents sat down like someone had unplugged their spines. Dad kept glancing at the door like he was waiting for Ashton Kutcher to pop out with a camera crew. Mom looked like she was trying to recall every mean thing she'd said to me in the last 5 years. Spoiler, it was a long list. Elise walked through the basics: income, credit scores, equity. She was graceful, clinical, neutral. I, on the other hand, sat in silent observation. Didn't even gloat. That would have ruined it. My mom cleared her throat halfway through. "So, when did you? I mean, how long have you been doing this investing thing?" "Oh," I said, like I just remembered I was wearing pants. "About a year now. Bought my first property 9 months after graduation." "You mean the graduation She stopped. "The one you missed for bowling night?" I said with a casual smile. "Yep. That one." She went red. Dad leaned back in his chair. "Look, Landon. We didn't know." "You knew," I said, still calm. "You just didn't care." And that was the moment. That flicker in their faces, not shame. Not guilt. Fear. The realization that I wasn't the quiet kid fixing vacuums anymore. I was the one they now had to impress. "So," I said, flipping through the paperwork Elise had prepared, "let's talk interest rates." Mom blinked. "You're actually going to consider helping us?" I smiled wider. "Did I say that?" "So let's talk terms," I said again, flipping the page for effect. Not because I needed to. I'd already memorized every line of the proposed agreement. Twice. But theatrics have their place, and this was mine. Mom cleared her throat. "Landon, sweetheart. You know we wouldn't ask for help if we weren't in a tough spot." I looked at her like I was processing an unfamiliar word. "Help?" I repeated. "I thought this was just business." Dad let out a dry chuckle. Of course. Strictly business. We're not looking for charity or anything." That was a lie. Their credit score looked like it had been dragged behind a truck. Missed payments. An old gym membership they apparently forgot to cancel. A failed kitchen remodel that stopped at demo day and never made it to rebuild. They were underwater. And sinking. "So what exactly happened?" I asked, voice light. "Last I checked, your bowling trophies weren't in foreclosure." Dad sighed. "We had a few setbacks. The plumbing, the roof, Christine's car. Oh, don't forget the patio extension," Mom added quickly. "We wanted to finally host the family for the holidays." I raised an eyebrow. "Family, huh?" They both paused. Because if I remembered correctly, and I did, I wasn't included in those holiday invites. But sure, let's blame the collapsing finances on an imaginary dinner I wasn't going to be invited to. Elise cleared her throat gently, the universal sign for, "Let's move this along before it turns into a therapy session. Mr. Rhodes has authority to approve or reject this offer," she said, glancing toward me. "Would you like to propose any adjustments before we proceed?" Absolutely, I said smoothly. I slid out a pen and wrote a number on the back of the form. 7%. Dad blinked. You can't be serious. It's under 10, I replied. You're lucky I didn't add a convenience fee for emotional damage. Mom looked horrified. Landon, sweetheart, this is us. Your parents. I nodded slowly. And I'm the investor. See how everyone gets a title today? They stared at me like they were hoping I'd break. Like I'd crack a grin and say, just kidding, 2% and hugs for everyone. But I didn't flinch. Because I remembered the look on Mom's face when she brushed past me on my graduation day like I was a coworker from a job she quit 10 years ago. I remembered the group family photo from Tyler's birthday, where I was literally cropped out of the frame because you were standing in bad light. I remembered Dad saying, not everyone gets a trophy, Landon, when I won the school award for Best Technical Project. No, I wasn't flinching. Not today. Mom tried another angle. We raised you. You wouldn't be who you are without us. That one made me smile for real. True. If I hadn't spent 18 years figuring out how to survive your version of love, I probably wouldn't be so good at analyzing risk. Elise pretended to cough, but I swear she was hiding a laugh. Dad's jaw clenched. If this is about punishing us. No, I said. This is about rewarding myself. And maybe giving you the same silence you gave me. They sat back in silence. Defeated. And for a moment, I almost softened. Almost. But then Mom said it. Quietly. Bitterly. We should have just gone with the credit union. And I couldn't help it. I laughed. I'm sure they'd love to hear about your bowling debt and the raccoon you accidentally made a roommate. Because yeah, I saw the inspection report. After the raccoon comment, my dad shifted in his chair like it suddenly had thorns. Mom looked like she wanted to throw her purse at me, but it was one of those oversized full leather tote bags, and probably weighed 40 pounds. Might have done real damage. But she didn't. She just exhaled sharply, then leaned forward with that. We're still your parents. Look, that used to work when I was 9 and hungry for praise. We've made mistakes, she said like this was some midday soap opera confession. But we've always loved you. Sure, I replied. In the same way someone loves a garden hose. Useful. Quiet. Always kept outside. Dad groaned. This is getting out of hand. No, I said. This is finally in hand. My hand? Elise, bless her soul, tried to keep things moving professionally. Would you like to proceed with the terms, Mr. Rhodes? I would, I said. But let's add a few new clauses, just so we're all clear. I flipped the page and wrote. Late payment equals 1. 5% penalty. Missed payment equals automatic escalation. Emotional guilt equals 0% effectiveness. I slid the paper over and looked them both in the eye. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just not going to help you pretend anymore. Mom's voice cracked. You're punishing us for one missed event? I laughed under my breath. No, Mom. I'm punishing you for a lifetime of treating me like I was an optional accessory to your image. Dad stood up suddenly, palms flat on the table. We gave you a home. Food. Clothes. Yup. I nodded. And then silence. Absence. And every possible excuse to make me feel like I never quite made the cut. The conference room felt smaller somehow. Like the air had been turned down to a whisper. Even Elise looked down, quietly organizing documents that didn't need organizing. You know what the best part of all this is? I asked, standing slowly. They didn't respond. I tapped the table once. I could have said no. I could have rejected your application. But I didn't. I showed up. I gave you the decency of a face-to-face meeting, something you never gave me when I needed it most. My mom blinked hard, mascara starting to smudge at the corners. Why are you doing this? She whispered. I tilted my head. Because I want you to see what happens when the person you ignored stops needing you, and starts being the person you need. Elise cleared her throat. If you'd like time to review, You're welcome to take the documents home and return with signatures. Dad didn't move. Mom just stared at the pen in front of her like it was a grenade. Finally, I added one more thing, not legally binding, but heavy nonetheless. If you do sign, I said, I expect on-time payments. No more bowling budget before bills. No more kitchen renovations for parties I'm not invited to. They looked up at me, startled. Wait, so you're still considering? I didn't say I forgave you. I interrupted. But I'm offering terms. My terms? As I gathered my folder and turned to leave, Mom stood up quickly. Landon, she started. But I paused at the door and gave her a look I knew she recognized, the same one I used to wear when they left for a trip without saying goodbye. I have another meeting, I said calmly. With a contractor I actually trust. Then I nodded at Elise, pulled the door open, and stepped into the hallway. My phone buzzed. A text from Nora, my tenant. Thanks again for fixing the sink. You're the best landlord ever. And somehow, that hit harder than anything else in the last hour. For a week, my phone stayed silent. No texts. No calls. No boomer Facebook posts from Mom tagged with #FamilyFirst. Next to a photo I wasn't in. Just nothing. You'd think I'd be relieved. And I was, sort of. But silence has a way of echoing louder when you used to crave it. I didn't expect an apology. My parents treated apologies like unicorns, pretty, but imaginary. Still, part of me thought they might send a message. Something like, "We didn't mean to hurt you." Or, "Nice office, by the way." Nope. Instead, what I got was an envelope. It arrived one morning, hand-delivered by Elise herself. She stepped into my small office with a look that could only be described as professionally entertained. "Guess who dropped this off?" she said, placing the envelope on my desk. I didn't guess. She smirked anyway. "They didn't even ask to see you. Just said, give this to him." Real casual, like you're not funding their roof repairs. I peeled it open. Inside, the signed contract. Every clause. Every term. Even the 9.7% interest rate. All initialed in firm, slightly irritated handwriting. And on a post-it note, in my mom's familiar capital letters. "We don't have to like this. But we're not stupid. See? No, thank you. No, we're proud." Just the emotional equivalent of a grocery store receipt. Elise tilted her head. "You good?" I exhaled, folded the contract, and nodded. Better than I thought I'd be. "You want me to lock this in?" "Yeah. They're officially ours." "Ours?" I grinned. "Quiet Future Holdings. Has a nice ring, right?" She raised an eyebrow. "Why that name?" "Because that's all I ever wanted from them. A little quiet. A future they didn't control." She didn't say anything for a second, then gave a soft laugh. "You're colder than you look, Mr. Rhodes." I shrugged. Not cold. Just done. Later that night, I went back to my fourth property, the duplex I'd been gutting myself. I sat on the newly installed floorboards, surrounded by paint cans and old tools. It smelled like fresh progress and faint dust. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. Unknown number, but the area code was familiar. I hit play. It was my dad. His voice was lower than usual, almost unsure. "Hey, Landon. I guess you got the papers." We didn't mean to drop them off like that. Your mom just, well, we didn't want to make a scene." A pause. Then, "I wanted to say, thanks. Even if this feels weird. You didn't have to help us. I don't think we made it easy for you. You've done well, son. I mean it. We didn't see it coming." He stopped again. Then added softly, "Maybe that's on us." Click. I sat there holding the phone, thumb hovering over the delete button. But I didn't delete it. I replayed it twice. Not because it made me feel better, but because it made things clearer. That was the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get from James Rhodes. And maybe that was okay. The next morning, I called Elise. "Let's finalize the mortgage transfer paperwork," I said. Still want it listed under the LLC name? Absolutely. You sure? She asked. They'll see it on every document. I know, I said, smiling. That's the point. 2 days later, their first statement arrived. Monthly mortgage bill. Due in 30 days. Stamped across the top in bold. Quiet Future Holdings, LLC. Managing Director, Land and Roads. I didn't send a welcome gift. But I did consider mailing them a bowling pin, wrapped in gold foil, just for closure. Didn't need to. They already knew who owned the lane now. A few days after everything was finalized, I got a text from my mom. We signed. Hope that makes you happy. No emojis. No punctuation. No warmth. Just words that felt like sandpaper, dry, obligatory, and still blaming me. But something wild happened when I read it. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel that familiar twist in my chest, the one that used to whisper, say something kind so they don't feel bad. Instead, I closed the message and opened my calendar. I had a meeting with a flooring supplier in 30 minutes. And that, right there, was the shift. I wasn't waiting around for their feelings anymore. I was building things that didn't need their permission to matter. That same week, Elise invited me to a private networking lunch. A room full of people with pressed collars, leather portfolios, and voices that sounded like they practiced saying, synergy, in the mirror. I almost didn't go. But I threw on my cleanest work shirt, still had paint on the cuffs, and showed up early. Habit from the trade days. Still can't walk into a room late without feeling like a failure. We sat around a long polished table. Some investor from a regional group glanced at my name tag. Land and Roads. Quiet Future Holdings? He read aloud. Don't think I've heard of you. I smiled. You have now. The guy across from me smirked. And what's your niche? Tradesman First Rentals, I said, not missing a beat. Properties I used to get kicked out of. Now I own them. Keep the prices fair. Fix what breaks. Show up when the heater dies. That earned a few raised brows. The suit beside me chuckled. So, community landlord? I prefer local investor with a wrench, I said. The laughter around the table wasn't mocking. It was impressed. That's when it hit me. I wasn't an outsider here. I was exactly what this room needed more of. After the meeting, I took a quiet drive past my old neighborhood. Not to stir the pot. Just curiosity, I guess. The house looked the same. Peeling paint, overgrown hedges, the same faded gnome leaning sideways like it had given up decades ago. But it didn't look big anymore. Not important. It looked like a place I used to rent space in, emotionally and otherwise. I stepped out of the car and stood across the street for a while. The porch light was on barely. Then my eyes found the mailbox. There it was, plain as day. Quiet Future Holdings, LLC. Managed by appointment only. Right under the rusted flag. I remembered something my dad once said, maybe when I was 15. I'd asked if I could skip bowling night because I had a summer job orientation. He didn't even look up from his plate. Money's temporary, son. Family is forever. Right. Unless you're the one they leave off the invite list for Thanksgiving. Back at my place, mine, in my name, no shared walls, I sat on the balcony with a notebook. Wrote 3 words at the top of the first page. What's next? Because this wasn't the end. Not even close. There were more properties to renovate. More people to rent to fairly. More first-generation business owners who needed someone to believe in what they were building, even when no one else did. I wasn't chasing my parents' approval anymore. I was building something better. A future so quiet, it couldn't be ignored. A few days later, my cousin texted me out of nowhere. Yo. Your parents dropped out of the bowling league. Said it's not financially smart, LMAO. I laughed. Didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because some traditions aren't worth saving, especially the ones where you're never invited in the first place. A week after the contract activated, the first payment was due. $1,962.34. Nothing extraordinary. Just another number in a system they never thought I'd be a part of. I didn't expect anything special. They'd probably mail a check, complain about the interest behind closed doors, maybe still joke about me when no one's looking. But what I got instead was a phone call. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity's a weird beast. Hello? Silence. Then Mom's voice. Soft. Slower than usual. Landon, the payment went through. Just wanted to let you know. I didn't respond right away. So she added, we're doing our part. A pause. Then, like it physically hurt her to say it. And I saw your name on the statement. That was surprising. I smiled, letting the quiet stretch long enough to be felt. Surprising's better than disappointing, right? She didn't answer. Not directly. Just exhaled. Well, that's all. Bye. Click. No. I love you. No. We're proud. But also, no denial anymore. And for once, that was enough. 2 months later, I got an email. From the same regional investor I met at that networking lunch. Subject line. Joint property venture proposal, trade first housing. They'd seen my model. Heard from someone who heard from someone. Wanted to partner on a new set of duplexes near a trade school district. You'd be the face. It read. Community trusted. Ground built. We need that. I reread that line 5 times. They needed me. And not because I was a Rhodes. Because I was Landon. That Friday, I passed by the old bowling alley on the way to a site inspection. Out of pure curiosity, I swung into the parking lot. Empty. Lights off. For lease signs swinging slightly in the breeze. I don't know why it hit me so hard. But that's when it clicked. That old bowling league? It wasn't just a hobby. It was a hierarchy. A little world where they were respected. Cheered. Important. And now? Now they paid rent to the kid they once left off the scoreboard. The one who didn't get a slice of cake. Didn't get a seat at the graduation dinner. Didn't even get picked up when it rained. But I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. Like I could finally put the ball down. Back at my office, Elise handed me a file. 3rd payment cleared. They're consistent. Fear is a powerful motivator. I joked. She grinned. Want me to send them next month's invoice? I leaned back in my chair and nodded. Yeah. Send it with the usual template. Oh, and by the way, she added, I updated the footer like you asked. Good, I said. Because now, every month, like clockwork, they'd receive a digital reminder with 3 simple words underneath the transaction summary. This mortgage proudly managed by the son you skipped graduation for.